The sun had risen early that morning, red and round like a burning coal hanging over the dry village. The wind that once carried the scent of fresh grass now smelled of dust and despair. For months no rain had kissed the earth. The fields that once danced with green stalks of wheat now lay silent, cracked and brown. The people of Sundarpur, a small farming village, looked to the sky each day, but the clouds never came. Among them lived a woman named Maya, a widow with 3 small children. Her hut stood at the edge of the village, made of mud and bamboo, its roof patched with old sacks. Once her husband had been a strong farmer who sang while plowing the fields, his laughter echoing through the valley. But after a fever took him 2 years ago, Maya became both mother and father to her children. She worked in others' farms to earn a few handfuls of rice, and on some days even that was a dream. Every morning, before the first light touched the hills, Maya would wake up. She would fill a small pot of water from the almost dry well, wash her face and whisper a short prayer. Her children, Rahul, the eldest at 12, Kiran 10, and Anaya, the youngest at 6, would still be asleep, their thin bodies curled close together for warmth. She looked at them each day and felt her heart grow heavy and hopeful at once. They were her reason to live, her reason to fight. That morning, as she prepared a small fire to boil the last bit of grain she had, she noticed how light the sack had become. Only a handful of rice remained. She poured it into a pot and added more water than usual so it would look like more food. When Rahul woke, he asked softly, "Ma, will there be enough today?" Maya smiled, hiding her worry behind gentle eyes. "Enough for everyone, my son," she said, stirring the pot slowly. "We just need to be patient. The rains will come soon." But deep inside, even she wasn't sure anymore. After breakfast, which was nothing more than a thin rice soup, Maya tied her sari tightly and stepped out into the hot wind. She carried a small sickle and an old basket. The fields nearby had turned to dust, yet she still went every day, hoping to find weeds or leftover grains from old harvests. Sometimes she collected dry grass to sell as animal feed. Anything she could trade for food was a blessing. As she walked, she passed other villagers sitting under dead trees, their faces lined with worry. The village well had dropped so low that only a few buckets of muddy water could be drawn each day. The cattle had grown thin and the children no longer played. They sat in the shade, tired and hungry. "Maya," called out Leela, her neighbor, who was sitting near her hut mending an old sari. "You are going again? There's nothing left in the fields." "I know," Maya replied softly, "but I can't sit still. Maybe I'll find something the others missed." Leela shook her head sadly. "You are strong, Maya. May the rain bless you soon." Maya smiled weakly and continued her walk. The road was long, the dust rising under her bare feet. The sun grew hotter and sweat trickled down her face. Still, she walked on. By noon, she reached the far end of the land owned by Mr. Rakesh, the wealthiest man in the village. His house stood tall with red bricks and a wide veranda, a sharp contrast to the huts around. His fields were fenced, and though the crops were fewer than before, they still grew green under the care of his private water supply. Maya stood by the fence, staring at the tall plants swaying lightly in the wind. Her stomach growled, and she thought of her children waiting at home with nothing to eat. For a moment, she hesitated. She could not take even a grain without permission. It was wrong. But hunger had a way of silencing pride. She turned away quickly before the thought could tempt her heart. Instead, she decided she would come back later to ask for work. Maybe if she begged, he would allow her to earn some food. When she reached home that evening, her children ran out to meet her. "Ma, did you find anything?" Kiran asked eagerly. Maya shook her head but smiled. "Tomorrow will be better," she said, though her voice trembled. She gave them each a drink of water and held Anaya on her lap, brushing her thin hair away from her face. As the night fell, the village gathered near the temple to pray for rain. The priest lit a lamp and chanted softly, while the villagers joined in. Their voices rose together, a song of hope in a hopeless time. Maya stood at the back, her hands folded, her eyes fixed on the dark sky. "Please," she whispered, "just a little rain. For my children, for the land." But the sky gave no answer. Only the dry wind replied. Later that night, after her children had fallen asleep, Maya sat outside her hut and looked at the moon. It hung pale and distant, as if mocking her pain. She thought of her husband and the days when laughter filled their home. Now the sound of her children's quiet breathing was her only comfort. She knew she could not wait anymore. The last handful of rice would be gone by morning. Her children needed food and pride could not feed them. She made up her mind. At sunrise, she would go to Mr. Rakesh's house and ask him directly. She would not ask for money. She would ask for food. And she would offer her work, her strength, her time, her sweat in return. When dawn broke, she rose quietly, covered her head with her faded scarf, and whispered a prayer over her sleeping children. Then, with determined steps, she began her walk toward the landlord's fields. Her shadow stretched long across the dusty road, like the mark of a promise she could not break. Behind her, the village was silent, except for the cry of a thirsty crow. Ahead of her, the land shimmered in the heat, endless and cruel. Yet in Maya's heart, a small flame of courage burned, a mother's love that refused to die, even when everything else around her had. And though the world seemed to have forgotten mercy, Maya carried it still within her, quiet, steadfast and strong as the earth she walked upon. Part 2. The Plea for Mercy. The morning sun rose gently, spreading a soft orange light across the dry land. The sky was clear, too clear, without even a hint of a cloud. The world looked calm, but Maya's heart was restless. She had made her decision, and once Maya decided something for her children, nothing could stop her. She folded her old scarf around her head and looked at her 3 children, still asleep on the mat. Their faces were peaceful, but their cheeks looked thinner than before. Rahul's arm was around his sisters, protecting them even in his dreams. Maya smiled sadly. She wanted to let them sleep a little longer. Dreams were kinder than hunger. She whispered a quiet prayer. God, give me strength today, and stepped outside. The air was dry and hot even in the early hours. The ground cracked beneath her feet as she walked. The road to Mr. Rakesh's house was long, but she walked with steady steps. Her hands were rough, her sari faded, yet there was a quiet dignity in her eyes. When she reached the tall iron gate of Rakesh's estate, she paused. The gate was shining, strong, and painted fresh, unlike anything else in the village. She could see green plants behind the walls, the only patch of life in miles. She took a deep breath and pushed the gate gently. It opened with a soft sound. Inside, the air felt different, cool, fresh. There was a well near the house, and a few men were working, watering the fields. They looked up as she entered, surprised to see her. One of them, a kind old man named Gopal, recognized her. "Maya, what brings you here so early?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Maya smiled weakly. "I've come to speak to the master," she said. Gopal nodded, understanding her unspoken words. "He is in the veranda, but speak gently. He's not an easy man to please." Maya nodded and thanked him. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked toward the veranda. Mr. Rakesh was sitting on a large wooden chair reading a newspaper. He was a tall man in his early 40s, dressed in white clothes that looked spotless. On the small table beside him sat a cup of tea and a bowl of sugar. He had a face that looked strict, but not cruel. Just distant, like someone who had forgotten how it felt to struggle. Maya stopped a few steps away and bent her head respectfully. "Namaste, Sahib," she said softly. Rakesh looked up, a little surprised. "Yes, who are you?" "I am Maya," she said. "From Sundarpur village?" He nodded slightly. "What do you want?" Her throat felt dry, but she gathered her courage. "My children haven't eaten for 2 days," she said honestly. "There is no food left in my home and no rain for the crops, please." She paused and lowered her eyes. "Feed my hungry children, Sahib. I will work in your fields. I will do any work you give me." The air went still. The workers nearby stopped moving for a moment, listening. Rakesh looked at her quietly. He was not used to people speaking so directly. Many came to ask for money, for water, for help. But this woman's voice carried something else. It was full of truth and also a strange strength. "You will work?" he asked, his tone calm but curious. "Yes, Sahib," Maya said. "I can plant, I can clean, I can carry water, whatever you ask. I don't ask for money, only for some food for my children." Rakesh looked away for a moment, then stood up. "There is not much work these days," he said slowly. "But I can let you collect the dry grass near the well. My cows need food too." Maya nodded quickly. "Yes, Sahib. Thank you, Sahib. Anything you give me I will do with all my heart." He studied her for a moment longer, then said, "You may start today. Ask Gopal to give you a basket. You will be paid in grain at the end of the week." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of deep relief. "Thank you, Sahib," she whispered. As she turned to leave, Rakesh added quietly, "And ask the cook for a small bag of rice. Take it home today." Maya froze. For a moment she couldn't believe what she had heard. She turned slowly, her eyes wide. "Rice, Sahib?" He nodded. "Yes, for your children." Her lips trembled. "You are kind, Sahib. May God bless your fields." She bowed deeply before leaving. When she reached the kitchen, the cook handed her a small sack of rice, smiling gently. "You're lucky today, Maya," he said. She held the bag close to her chest as if it were a treasure. Her steps were light as she walked back home. For the first time in weeks, she could imagine her children smiling again. As she walked through the village, a few neighbors noticed her. Leela called out, "Maya, where are you coming from?" Maya smiled shyly. "From the landlord's house. He gave me work. And some rice." Leela's face lit up. "Oh, that's good news, Maya. Your children will eat today?" "Yes," Maya said softly. "They will eat." When she reached home, the children came running. "Ma, you're back!" Rahul shouted. Then his eyes caught the bag of rice and his face brightened. "Food," he said with excitement. Maya laughed, tears of joy running down her cheeks. "Yes, my loves, food." That evening, for the first time in many days, the little hut smelled of cooking rice. The steam rose gently into the cool night air. The children ate with smiles, their eyes shining with life again. Maya sat quietly, watching them eat, her heart full of gratitude. After the meal, she stepped outside. The stars had begun to appear one by one in the deep blue sky. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you, God. Thank you for giving me courage today." Back at the landlord's house, Rakesh stood near his veranda, staring at the same sky. He thought of the woman who had come to him that morning, thin, tired, yet proud. Something about her words stayed with him. "Feed my hungry children, human." It echoed in his mind. Human. It wasn't an insult. It was a reminder. A reminder that no matter how wealthy or powerful one became, compassion was what truly made a person human. He sighed softly and turned back toward his house. For the first time in many months, the fields outside his window didn't feel like just property. They felt alive, like they carried the silent prayers of many souls waiting for mercy. That night, while Maya slept beside her children, she dreamed of rain, soft silver rain falling gently over the land. In her dream, the earth drank deeply and green leaves rose again. When she woke the next morning, there was still no rain, but her heart was lighter, because she had found not just work, but hope. Part 3, the turning point. The next morning, Maya rose before the sun. The air was cool, and the faint stars were still visible in the pale sky. Her children were still asleep, their faces calm and full after last night's meal. She covered them with a thin blanket and smiled. "Sleep well, my little ones," she whispered. "Your mother will work hard today." She wrapped her faded sari tightly, tied her hair back, and stepped outside with quiet determination. Today was the beginning of her new work in Mr. Rakesh's fields. She felt nervous but hopeful. It had been a long time since she had something certain to look forward to. When she reached the landlord's estate, the fields were still covered in a light mist. The green crops looked brighter than ever. Maya stopped for a moment, breathing in the cool air that smelled faintly of wet soil from the well's water. It felt peaceful. Old Gopal, the caretaker, was already there. He waved to her. "Ah, Maya, you came early." "That's good. Early workers bring good luck to the land." Maya smiled. "I need to start early, Gopalji. The sun becomes too hot later." He nodded and handed her a basket. "The master said you may start by clearing the dry grass from near the well." "The cows need feed." "Yes," she said eagerly. "I can do that." She began working quietly. Her hands moved fast, collecting grass, tying it into small bundles. The sun rose slowly, turning the sky golden. Sweat formed on her forehead, but she didn't stop. Every pull of the grass, every bend of her back was an act of love for her children. Each movement carried her prayer, "Let them never sleep hungry again." By mid-morning, other workers arrived. They greeted her warmly. Some had known her husband, Rajan, and spoke kindly about him. "He was a good man," said one. "Always helped others." Maya nodded silently, her heart full of memories. At noon, Gopal called out, "Maya, take a break. Come drink some water." She walked toward the well and washed her hands. The cold water felt like a blessing. She drank slowly, enjoying every drop. Nearby, Rakesh watched from his veranda. He noticed how steadily she worked, never complaining, never resting for long. That day passed quickly. When the sun began to set, the sky turned a soft orange. Maya gathered her basket of grass and brought it to Gopal. "Here, I finished all this," she said, her voice tired but proud. He smiled. "You've done well, Maya. You work harder than many." As she prepared to leave, Rakesh called out from a distance, "Maya." She turned quickly. "Yes, Sahib?" He walked closer. "You have done a good job today. Tell the cook to give you some vegetables to take home." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "Thank you, Sahib, you are generous." He nodded and turned back toward the house. But as he walked away, he thought about her calm eyes, her humble words, and the quiet strength that came from deep love. Something about her reminded him of his own mother, who had also worked hard in the fields long ago. Days turned into weeks. Maya worked every day, rain or shine, though still the rain clouds did not come. The heat grew worse and the earth began to crack again. Some workers stopped coming, but Maya never missed a day. Her body grew thinner, but her spirit stayed bright. Each evening when she returned home, her children ran to greet her. Rahul would help wash her feet with a small jug of water. Kiran would stir the pot on the fire, and little Anaya would sit near her, telling stories she had made up. Their laughter filled the small hut again. They had little, but they had hope, and that was more precious than gold. Sometimes after dinner, Maya would look up at the stars and say softly, "Thank you, God, for today. Please bless the man who gave me work." She did not know that on some nights Rakesh stood at his veranda, looking up at the same stars, thinking of her words from that first day. "Feed my hungry children, human." He could not forget them. One evening, as she worked near the well, Maya noticed something strange. The water level had dropped very low. The buckets were pulling up mud instead of water. She felt a chill of worry. If the well dries up, she thought, the fields will die. Then everyone will suffer again. She went to Gopal and said gently, "The well is becoming dry. Maybe we should dig deeper or check the pipes." Gopal nodded, frowning. "You're right, Maya, I'll tell the master." Later that day, Rakesh came to see it himself. He saw the cracked earth around the well and the worry in the workers' faces. Maya stood quietly nearby. He sighed. "It seems the land is giving up." Maya looked at him and said softly, "The land never gives up, Sahib. It only waits for care. If we keep working, it will answer us." Her words were simple, but they touched him. He looked at her and realized she had faith in the earth the way some people had faith in God. "Maybe you're right," he said after a moment. "We will not stop. We'll dig deeper." So the next day, under Maya's suggestion, everyone began helping. Men, women, even children. They cleared the area and dug around the well carefully. It was hard work, but the feeling of unity gave them strength. Maya's hands bled a little, but she didn't care. She worked as if the land itself depended on her, and perhaps it did. After 2 days, they struck a deeper layer of moist soil. When they dug a bit more, water began to fill the well again, slowly at first, then stronger. The workers cheered with joy. Gopal laughed out loud, saying, "Look, Maya, your faith has brought the water back." Rakesh stood silently watching the scene. For the first time in many months, he felt something deep inside him move, something he had lost long ago. He smiled, a rare soft smile. Perhaps she was right, he whispered to himself. The land only waits for care. That night, as Maya walked home, she felt lighter than ever. The moonlight painted the path silver, and a cool breeze touched her face. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you, God. Thank you for hearing our prayers." At home, the children greeted her with laughter. She told them about the well, about how the water had returned. Rahul's eyes lit up. "Ma, maybe the rain will come next." Maya hugged him and said, "Yes, my son. Maybe it will." They sat outside their hut for a long time that night, watching the stars. The air felt different, alive, full of quiet hope. The land still looked dry, but in Maya's heart, something had already bloomed. The belief that no hardship lasts forever when there is faith and kindness in human hearts. And though she didn't know it yet, that small act of courage and faith, speaking up about the well, and believing in the land, had begun to change more than just her life. It was changing Rakesh's heart too, one day at a time. Days passed after the well was saved. The workers continued their labor with new energy, and the fields once again looked alive. The leaves grew greener, and the earth seemed softer under their feet. Maya worked harder than ever, her heart filled with gratitude. Every morning she woke up before sunrise, cooked simple rice for her children, and walked miles to the fields. Her body was thin, but her spirit was strong. The villagers often said, "Maya works as if the land itself gives her strength." Even Mr. Rakesh noticed her dedication. From his veranda he would sometimes watch her, bent over the fields, her sari fluttering in the breeze, her hands moving quickly and gracefully. There was peace in the way she worked, and it began to touch something in his heart. One evening, as the workers were leaving, Rakesh called her. "Maya," he said. She stopped and turned. "Yes, Sahib?" He pointed toward the field. "You have done well. The land looks better than before. The crops are growing again." Maya smiled softly. "It is not me alone, Sahib. It is everyone's effort. The land always rewards care." He nodded, impressed by her humility. "You speak wisely, Maya. You remind me of my mother. She also loved the land." Maya looked down shyly. "A mother always finds love in small things, Sahib, even in dry soil." Rakesh smiled faintly. "That is true." From that day he began to look at his land differently. It was no longer just his property. It was a living part of the village, a part that connected everyone. The months rolled by and still no real rain had come. The sky stayed pale and empty. The air was hot and dry again. Yet Maya kept believing that one day the clouds would listen. At night, when her children slept, she often sat outside, looking up at the stars. She whispered prayers for rain, not for herself, but for everyone. Her youngest, little Anaya, had grown weak again. She often coughed and felt too tired to play. Maya tried to keep her warm and fed, but the little girl missed her father and dreamed of the rain. "Ma," Anaya asked one evening, lying in her mother's lap, "when will the rain come? I want to hear its song again." "Soon, my love," Maya replied softly, brushing her daughter's hair. "The clouds are only sleeping. They will wake soon." Anaya smiled, her small fingers holding her mother's hand. "Then I will dance when it rains." Maya kissed her forehead. "Yes, my little one, you will dance." The next morning Maya went to work as usual. The sun was dull that day, hidden behind thin gray clouds. The air felt heavier than before. Gopal looked up at the sky and said, "Maya, maybe today we will get rain." She smiled. "Yes, maybe today." As the day went on, the wind changed. It became cooler and the sky grew darker. The workers stopped to look up. "Could it be?" someone whispered. And then, as if the heavens had been waiting for that one hopeful moment, a small drop of water fell on Maya's hand. She looked at it with wide eyes. Another drop followed. Then another. Within moments the rain came pouring down. The dry earth sighed with joy. The dusty leaves turned fresh and green. The air filled with the smell of wet soil, a scent so sweet it felt like a blessing. The workers laughed and cheered. Some lifted their hands toward the sky. Others danced like children. Maya closed her eyes, letting the rain fall on her face. It washed away the dust, the worry, the years of pain. Gopal shouted over the sound of the rain, "Maya, your faith has brought the water again." She laughed through her tears. "No, Gopalji, it is everyone's hope that has brought it." From his veranda, Rakesh stood silently watching the scene. The rain drenched everything, even his white clothes, but he didn't move. His heart was full. He whispered to himself, "This is what she believed in all along, the kindness of nature and the strength of love." That evening, when Maya returned home soaked but smiling, her children ran to her. "Ma, it's raining! Look, look!" "Yes," she cried joyfully. "The rain has come." They all went outside, dancing and laughing under the falling drops. Rahul and Kiran splashed in the puddles. Anaya twirled slowly, her little hands open to the sky. But as the evening grew colder, Anaya began to shiver. Maya quickly wrapped her in a blanket and brought her inside. She lit a small fire and held her close. "You'll be fine, my dear. You just got a little cold." Anaya smiled weakly and whispered, "Ma, I saw the rain. I am happy now." Maya kissed her cheek. "Rest now, my angel." The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving behind a fresh green world. The fields looked alive again. Flowers that had been hidden for months began to bloom. The village was filled with laughter and gratitude, but inside Maya's hut it was quiet. Too quiet. Little Anaya lay peacefully, her face calm and soft as if she were still dreaming. Maya sat beside her, holding her tiny hand. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently, but there was no anger in her heart, only love. She whispered, "You kept your promise, my child. You danced in the rain." Outside, the village women came to comfort her. Gopal told Rakesh what had happened, and for a long time, Rakesh stood by the window looking at the rain-soaked fields. He felt something deep inside him break open, a sense of guilt and understanding. He whispered to himself. She asked for food, not for herself, but for her children. And I gave too little, too late. That evening he went to Maya's hut. She was sitting quietly near the door, her eyes red but calm. When she saw him, she stood up and folded her hands. "Sahib," he lowered his head and said softly, "Maya, I am sorry." She shook her head gently. "You did what you could, Sahib. The rain has come. The land will live again." He looked at her and said, "Your strength has taught me more than all my wealth ever could." Then he looked toward the fields and said, "From today, these lands will not belong only to me. They will feed everyone." Maya looked at him, surprised. "Sahib?" "Yes," he said. "This land will now serve the whole village, and it will carry a new name, Anaya Fields." For the first time, Maya's lips curved into a trembling smile. "Thank you, Sahib. My daughter will live in every grain that grows here." That night, as the stars shone again above the wet earth, the sound of frogs and crickets filled the air. Maya sat outside looking at the glowing horizon. The world had changed softly, quietly, but deeply. She felt her daughter's spirit in the cool breeze, in the whisper of the rain, and in the promise of new life. And somewhere, in the heart of every villager who saw the green fields of Anaya bloom, Maya's faith became a living story, a reminder that even in the hardest times, hope never dies. The rain continued for many days after that night. It was as if the sky itself wanted to make up for the years of dryness. The earth became soft again, and small streams began to flow through the village. The fields sparkled with fresh green shoots, and the air smelled of life once more. For the people of Sundarpur, it was a new beginning. For Maya, it was both joy and sadness woven together. The land that had once been dry and lifeless was now full of hope. Yet her little Anaya was no longer there to see it. But Maya believed. Her daughter's soul was in every drop of rain, in every leaf that swayed gently in the wind. Every morning she would go to the fields and place a small flower near the corner where Anaya used to play. "You are here, my child," she would whisper softly, watching the crops grow. Mr. Rakesh kept his word. He renamed his land Anaya Fields and opened the gates for all villagers to work and share the harvest. No one went hungry again. Every family got a part of the field to care for, and they worked together like one big family. The village that had once known fear and drought now knew unity and kindness. Maya became known as Maya Didi to everyone, a sister to the whole village. Whenever someone lost hope, she would remind them gently, "The land listens to love. Never give up." Even children would come running to her hut after school. She would tell them stories about the earth, about the sun and the rain, and how patience brings blessings. Her words were simple, but they carried wisdom shaped by struggle. One evening, Gopal came to her hut and said with a smile, "Maya, the master has asked for you. He wants you to see the new water system he is building near the well." Maya stood up and followed him. When they reached the fields, she saw a small water tank built with clean stone, with a pipe that carried water to every part of the land. On the side of the tank was a sign carved in fresh letters, "Anaya Well, for every soul that thirsts." Tears filled Maya's eyes. "Sahib did this?" she asked softly. Gopal nodded. "Yes. He says it is for your daughter, and for every child who should never sleep hungry again." Maya touched the stone gently. The cool surface felt alive under her fingers. "She would have liked this," she whispered. Rakesh came walking from the other side of the field. His clothes were simple now, not like before. His face looked kinder, gentler. "Do you like it, Maya?" he asked. She turned to him, her eyes wet but smiling. "It is beautiful, Sahib. You have done something that will live forever." He nodded. "It was your faith that changed everything, Maya. You showed me that kindness is not weakness. It is strength. You reminded me that the land and people are one." Maya bowed her head humbly. "We all learned together, Sahib. The rain taught us patience and loss taught us love." Rakesh smiled. "You speak like a teacher now." Maya laughed softly. "Life teaches us all, Sahib. I just listen." As the months passed, the harvest grew rich. Golden crops waved like the sea in the sunlight. When the villagers gathered for harvest, they sang songs of gratitude. Maya walked among them, her sari bright, and her face glowing with quiet peace. She guided young women on how to cut the crops, carefully reminding them to thank the earth before each harvest. The day of the first big harvest festival arrived. People from nearby villages came to see the miracle of Anaya fields, how a once barren land now fed hundreds. There was music, laughter, and joy everywhere. Children ran around with garlands of flowers, and the air was full of happiness. Rakesh stood beside Maya as they watched the celebration. "The village is alive again," he said softly. "Yes," Maya replied. "It is alive because it remembers love." As evening came, the villagers lit lamps all around the field. The lights shone like stars on the ground. Maya carried a small lamp and placed it near the field's edge where she used to leave flowers for Anaya. The flame flickered gently in the breeze. Rakesh watched silently. "You still come here every day?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "This place keeps me close to her. But I'm not sad anymore. She is everywhere now, in the water, in the fields, in the smiles of these children." He looked around at the joyful crowd. "You are right, Maya. She is in every heart that remembers kindness." As years went by, Anaya Fields became famous beyond the village. People came from far away to see the place where hope had grown from despair. They came to meet the humble woman who had once begged only for food, but ended up feeding the spirit of an entire village. Maya never changed. She still lived in her small hut, still wore the same simple clothes, and still greeted everyone with warmth. Whenever visitors came, she would welcome them with a smile and say, "This land belongs to all who care for it." Even as her hair turned silver and her hands grew slower, her heart stayed as strong as the roots of the trees she had planted. One day, many years later, Maya sat by the field watching the golden sunset. The air was soft, and the crops swayed gently like waves. She closed her eyes and listened to the wind. It sounded like laughter, a child's laughter, clear and sweet. She smiled peacefully. "Anaya," she whispered, "you are here." When Rakesh came to the field that evening, he saw her sitting quietly, her eyes closed, a peaceful smile on her lips. He knew she had gone to rest, not in sorrow but in peace. He called the villagers, and together they prayed for her. The next morning they planted a small tree beside the well and placed a stone beneath it that read, "Here rests Maya, the mother of Anaya Fields." Her hands fed the earth and her heart fed humanity. The years rolled on. The tree grew tall, giving shade to all who came to rest there. Travelers and farmers still stopped by to offer water to the thirsty and food to the poor. They would tell the story of Maya and her daughter, how one mother's love had changed an entire world. Whenever the rain came, the villagers said softly, "Maya has spoken again." And the children, laughing and playing in the fields, would look up at the sky and whisper, "Thank you, Maya Didi." Because even though she was gone, her love had become part of the soil, part of the sky, part of the life that would never end. And the story of "She begged, feed my hungry children, human, I'll work your fields," lived on, not as a tale of sorrow, but as a lesson in kindness, faith, and the unbreakable strength of a mother's heart.